This episode is sponsored by Town Brewery. Go to townbrewery.ca, use the promo code Gavin at checkout, and receive 10% off your order. Thank you for tuning in. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Gabbin with Gavin podcast. This is episode 25. We're in 1990 studios, and we've got beer from Town Brewery. We have got a very, very special guest today. Our first ever Olympic gold medalist joins the podcast. Ross Rebagliati is the 1998 Olympic gold medalist in the men's giant slalom snowboarding. That was the inaugural year, the first ever Olympic gold medal in snowboarding itself. What followed him after was controversy. After testing positive for what the Olympic Committee referred to as a passive amount of secondhand marijuana, Ross was stripped of his medal and spent hours being interrogated inside of a Japanese prison. We're very honored to have him on the show today. This is going to be a lot of fun. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Olympic gold medalist Ross Rebagliati.
Right on. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hell yeah, man. Thank you so much for your time, dude. This is a real honor having you on. I want to just start off by saying, like, I can't wait to talk about all the Olympics, everything that happened after. But I just want to say, like, I want to talk about all the seriousness of everything. It must have been a traumatic experience for you, stuff that happened. But I want to start by saying, like, I apologize doing my research and everything for all the weed puns that you've had to put up with over your years. The amount of times I saw he's a high performing athlete and he blazes the competition.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
It's classic. But it was true.
That stuff seems to have followed you. This is awesome. So, Russ, let's talk about it, man. Because when you were a kid growing up, your dream wasn't to be a snowboarding gold medalist because snowboarding wasn't an Olympic event, or it wasn't even really a mainstream kind of sport, right?
Snowboarding wasn't allowed yet. Snowboarding wasn't allowed until I was 16, and I was 15 when I started snowboarding, and you couldn't buy a snowboard anywhere. There was no such thing as a snowboard. And we made snowboards in high school. We knew that there were snowboards that existed that were real, like from Burton, but it hadn't made its way to Vancouver. But I had friends from France, and one of my friend's dad's other dad was in Oregon, where some people were snowboarding. So yeah, it really was unheard of when I started it. And then the next year in '88, that was the first year that mountains started allowing it, but only one or two. Like, for example, Blackcomb allowed snowboarding in 1988, but Whistler didn't. Mm-hmm. Right? And same in the interior where I am now. Like, Silver Star allowed snowboarding in 1988, but none of the other mountains did, right? And so it was quite the ride, I have to say. From 88 to 98, we put snowboarding on the map, right? But at the same time, we felt like people before us, like Craig Kelly, and I mean, there's a long list of people that came before me. But from going backcountry before you're allowed to ride the chairlift, and then 10 years later you're competing at the Olympics. So for me it was wild because I was a ski racer, and when I stopped ski racing when I was 15 to start snowboarding, that I wasn't even allowed to do, that's when I gave up my original Olympic effort, as far as ski racing was concerned. So to realize it in a different sport 10 years later was quite unexpected.
Yeah,
the ride.
Definitely, man. A lot of things seem to be very full circle for you in your lifetime. It's awesome to see. And for anybody who doesn't know, you didn't grow up in like a small ski town or something. You're from Whistler. Like, to think that there was no place to get a snowboard, you had to go to a bicycle shop, right, to get your first board. That's crazy.
I grew up in Vancouver.
Sorry.
But no, it's true. Like, Vancouver's only an hour from Whistler, right? So we went to Whistler.
Yeah.
All the time, and you couldn't buy a snowboard in Whistler. And yeah, it's true. I bought a snowboard at a bike store near Stanley Park, and there was a skateboard shop on the other side of town that we knew had some snowboards sometimes, and also carried Transworld Snowboard magazine, which you couldn't get anywhere. And so we used to go there almost every day, hoping the new issue would come out. And it was kind of a little bit of a snowboard revolution.
Oh yeah. Not to get too far ahead here, but that must be insane for you as somebody who grew up on Transworld, eventually having the cover.
Yeah, I had the cover in 1990 or 91.
Badass picture, by the way.
So crazy. And I made a nice picture in the magazine in 1990, full page. And of course, I was still in high school. And, that was just crazy for a high school kid. But propelled me, kind of to want to keep going down that path. And by then I was already working with Craig Kelly, coaching his snowboard camp in the summer in Whistler. We were the first camp that snowboard camp didn't exist, that we were the first guys. And, then the next year, the snowboard shop camp came with Ken Ockenbach and so forth, and then it just went gangbusters. Right. Yeah. But, I don't think about it very much, but there is a lot of history there. That's over 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm. It's like you're saying, man, you guys really did kind of pioneer the scene, you and the guys who came before you. It's such a cool thing. And it's interesting to say you don't look back on it that much, because it's from fighting for your spots to even ride down the mountains to winning a gold medal for your country and then everything that followed after. When you do stop and take the minute to look back, you must think, what a crazy ride.
Well, I do a lot of interviews and things where I do talk about it from time to time, but it's not really something that anyone else, in my life can relate to, or even that they don't want to hear about it anymore either. Sure.
No, I imagine you get asked about this stuff all the time, man. So again, thank you for taking the time. You talked about the Craig Kelly snowboard camp. There was something really interesting I found in my research here. There's a BC Boys connection there. Is that
a BC Boys connection?
Yeah, Adam was one of the.
Oh yeah, the Beastie Boys. Yeah, Adam A was in our camp, and I had the chance to hang out with Adam for a week, and he was learning how to snowboard, and we all had our little tips for him and stuff like that, but he was just happy to be there ripping in the pipe and watching us ride and just learning from watching. He would hang out with the campers. He hung out with the campers in the hotel room. He shared a room with one of the campers, and he had his acoustic guitar and was ripping tunes at the end of the day and stuff. And it was pretty neat. We had Cheech and Chong, or Tommy Chong's son, can't remember his name now, but he was in our camp. And we had a lot of cool guys as coaches too, from back in the day, like Damian Sanders. I remember Terry Hawkinson was one of the coaches one year. It was quite the lineup.
That's awesome. Very cool stuff. Yeah, I kind of heard something about that just when I was reading. I was like, I gotta check in on that. Anytime I can ask about somebody who's hung out with the BC Boys, you gotta check.
Yeah, no, it was pretty awesome. And recently he's passed away too, which is wild. So.
No, it's cool that you got to share that memory. So you were a competitive skier growing up. And then what was it, just the love of snowboarding, just like friends, and then being influenced, and then trying it yourself, falling in love? Is that what made you transition? And then you just decided this is what you're going for?
Yeah, I kind of just went cold turkey. I quit ski racing before I even tried snowboarding, because I just knew I was going to love it so much.
Crazy.
And, I was 15 years old, and the woodwork teacher was helping us build snowboards and woodwork, and we built a press, right? And we made our own snowboards, and man, we were into it. right? And then finally, Mount Baker, just south of Vancouver in Washington, allowed snowboarding then. And so my dad would drive me and my friends down to Mount Baker on the weekends. And of course, that's where Craig Kelly's from. And that's his home mountain. And so we snowboarded that whole year at Mount Baker. And then the next year, like I said, in 88, we Blackcomb let us up. So we started going to Blackcomb every single weekend. And but there was no like transition. It was just like cold turkey. I'm quitting skiing. My dad was really upset about it because years of like racing skis and training and going to races. And then now I'm just doing a sport you're not even allowed to do. But then the next year, I got sponsored by Burton through Craig, and they sent me like 12 or 15 boards. That's when it clicked for my dad, and then he got behind it because no ski companies were sending me 10 pairs of racing skis, right? And so when he saw that, then he was all in after that.
That's so funny, man. When you're at this age and like, Burton sending you boards, it's not, snowboarding's not, there's no events in the Olympics. Is this something you think I'm just going to do because I love it? Or do you think this is going to lead to something? Where's your head at kind of right now? Or is this just, it's fun? You like hanging with the boys and.
Oh, my head was that Craig Kelly had a house. He was driving a brand new car. He was in snowboard movies and he was sponsored, man. Yeah. That's where my head was at. I was like, fucking right. That's what I want. And the next thing you know, I was 19 and I bought a house in Whistler and I had a nice truck and shit. And I was making money being a pro snowboarder.
Beautiful. Yeah. So so that's good for you. Yep.
You're 19, 20 years old, and that's what you do. It's crazy, right? Yeah. And everyone else is going to university, and I was in university for like a week, right? Mm-hmm. And I was sitting there, and this was kind of before I didn't know what I was going to do because everyone went to university, so I did too. And then my parents went to Europe, and they were gone, and I just sitting in class and just got up and walked out and drove to Whistler, and that was it. That was the fall of 1990, and just rolled right into my parents' condo while they were away on vacation and dropped out of university.
Hey, it turns out it was the right idea, man, because the next few years would really lead up to the biggest moment. I've got to say, I'm just going to assume the biggest moment in your life because it's so wild to think that 0.00 whatever % of people will ever do the thing you did, winning an Olympic gold medal, right? Before we get to Nagano, I read that just because it was the first time snowboarding was in the Olympics, everything's up in the air. Because of some technicalities, you almost didn't qualify to be on Team Canada.
Yeah.
Crazy, right? Like, can you tell us that story? Like for the guy who won the gold medal, almost didn't make it from our country. And snowboarding wasn't as big in Canada then too, right? Like,
well, no, of course, but it grew like crazy after the Olympics. I had lots of stories of people telling me they started snowboarding because of that. But I mean, what happened was I had a long career on the World Cup tour before the Olympics was in our life, right? Mm-hmm. And in 1994, I was already on World Cup for 4 years. And I had an amateur career that started in 88 that went to 92, 91, something like that. And I had climbed up into the top 3 in the world by 1994, right? I won the European Championships. I won the US Open. I won a bunch of other World Cups in the same season. And next thing you know, I'm ranked in the top 3. And then eventually I was ranked first and was killing it. And then in 94, we learned that, 98, we're going to the Olympics. Okay, fast forward to the Olympics or to the qualifying, a couple of years later, it was like December of 97. Okay, like 2 months before the Olympics, we have a World Cup race in Whistler. and we did the World Cup race, which was going to be used as one qualification race. And then we held 2 more giant slalom races just for the Canadian team the next day with JCJ Anderson and Mark Fawcett and whoever else was on the B team and so forth. And so I got second in all of them out of the Canadians. As far as the World Cup, I was second out of the Canadians. And I had won the Worcester World Cup in the past, actually. But I had gone through a bunch of weird stuff leading up to this point in time. Like I had knee surgery on my knee the year before, etc. Like there's a big backstory. But so the qualification races, I'm thinking, okay, great. I just got second in all 3 of these races out of all the Canadians. Before my knee surgery, I was actually ranked number 1 in the world, but on the other tour, not the FIS tour that was taking us to the Olympics, right? But the criteria was how you did in the qualification races plus past results. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm like,
Past
tussling
results,
with the best in the world, right? Plus, I just got second in all the, against Mark Fawcett and JCJ Anderson, who are also World Cup winning, even better than I was, right? And so I decided to go to Europe instead of going to Calgary or going to Lake Louise for the last qualification race. And the reason why I wanted to do that was to race the last 2 World Cups before Nagano with the field that I'm going to be racing in Nagano, and thinking that I'm going to make the team, like, for sure. And so I do that. I fly over. The airlines lose all my boards and everything. Okay. Fuck. So I get to Switzerland where we're racing. The first race is in Switzerland, just on the back of the Matterhorn. And I have no gear. The whole World Cup gets me gear, boots, bindings, board, the whole 9 yards, right? Bang out a 4th place out of that in that World Cup. And then the next weekend go to Austria and then bang out a 3rd place with all the gear that everybody lent me. Italian speed suit, like shit didn't even fit me, right? And but the interesting part was the board that my buddy from France lent me was just like a board that I had at home that used to be my sponsor. It was an old F2 board from 1994. So it's like 4 years old. And so when I got back to Canada, I grabbed that board. But to go back a couple of steps, I was dealing with this no equipment issue when my coach from Canada, who's in qualifications, tells me that qualifications are over, and I tied for 3rd place or 4th place on the team, and they gave it to the other guy because I didn't support the qualification process. And so now I'm not on the team now to go. And I also don't have equipment for the race that I just spent $5,000 to get to. And so, yeah, it was a heavy moment in time. Like my whole life's definitely leading up to going to Nagano if I can. And so my coach and I got a doctor to sign a letter saying that I had a hairline fracture in my leg from those 3 qualification races in Europe or in Whistler. And the extra couple of days that it would take me to travel to Europe instead of driving and racing earlier in Alberta would give me enough time to recoup. And that was the reason why I didn't go. Okay. So, and I said I was sorry.
Could you can you, like, sorry to jump in, can you kind of explain to people how big of a deal it is to not have your equipment, to pick up new everything like you were doing? It's
especially the boots. That was the weirdest part, was I had totally different boots, and I had a ski coach lend me his ski boots. But the funny part is that Mark Fawcett and JCJ Anderson were using those same boots in their snowboard bindings that this coach lent me, Rightfully F1 ski boots. And so I had such good feeling with these boots, and they were too big for me, that I bought the same pair that were the right size for me when I got back to Whistler, because I had 2 weeks after that race before I had to stage everything with the Olympic team in Calgary. And so I grabbed out the old board out of the closet that I had, and I got the right size boots, and I had like 1 day of training on Blackcomb, just free riding on my race board. And I never felt better, to be honest. Never felt better. I grabbed an old board that was 4 years old that I had custom made for me in Austria, actually, and an old ski family made skis for 300 years, and they
Awesome.
custom made me this board for F2. Anyway, it was epic.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's beautiful, man. It really is such a cool, like, everything's kind of happen for a reason in this cool journey of yours.
Yeah.
So I wanted to jump back to one thing really quick. You were saying it was 90. What year was it that they announced that snowboarding would be in the 98 Olympics?
94.
94. What was that like? Did it change the snowboarding community at all? Did guys get more competitive or anything? And what was that time between 94 to 98 like?
Very divisive on the tour. Because what happened is, at the same time, I'm just going to get in my car here.
Absolutely.
It's getting cold outside. But what happened was that as soon as they announced the Olympics were going to be in 98, they also launched a brand new tour. That was a FIS tour. You know, the ski federation was going to have their own snowboard World Cup tour. And so all the guys that were, say, top 20 or something like that, who never broken, did better than top 20, they all went over to the new tour, because all the best guys stayed on the International Snowboard Federation tour, because we were getting paid to ride on that tour. Like, all of, the tour was paying for my airplane tickets and my hotels and my rental cars and everything to go on that tour. And so we all stayed on that tour. And then that year there was, a lot of politics about who went, and all of a sudden now this guy is world champion and he never was top 20 before. And the media doesn't even know the old tour existed. The media just knows about the new tour that the Olympics is promoting, or that the ski federation is promoting. So I kind of like stayed on the original tour right up until the last minute. And then I switched over and I did one season before Nagano. And just to put it in perspective, like, I would maybe win one race a year. I did win a couple of races. Like I said earlier, I won the US Open and the European Championships, and was like second in St. Anne and stuff like that. But normally, if I can get one podium and then a couple of thirds and seconds in the season, that's a good season for me. My first year on the FIS tour, I won the first two races, right? Back to back. Like, that never happened before. And the bunch of the other guys came onto the tour after that. And yeah, so anyway, just lots of politics, and snowboarding isn't really cut out for politics.
For sure.
And things got heated up a lot anyways, just because of the Olympics. Like, we didn't have a race that was going to be in 4 years before that. Like, to have one race that's going to be in 4 years, that was a new way of thinking about a race. And it all of a sudden, it put the World Cup tour just was like training compared to what it used to be. Like, all of a sudden the World Championships is just training now for the Olympics. And so our mindset changed. Like, I stopped competing in a couple of other disciplines and just focused on giant slalom for that whole 4 years. And I would just I had the Olympics in the crosshairs right from the beginning.
Yep. Absolutely, man. It's awesome. It is really cool to think, like, from fighting for your spots on that mountain to qualifying for the Olympic Games, representing the country. It's such a cool journey. And you mentioned a good season was winning one race, podium a few times. You really saved to the end. And won the biggest race of your career, the 1998 Nagano Olympics. And after the hiccup, making sure that you got on the team with the qualifying and everything, I think it was something I touched on at the beginning. It's a very storybook, and there's a lot of stuff leading up to this, from the having troubles with the technicalities, getting on the team, the equipment being lost. I saw an interview after you won where you dedicated the race to friends who were lost in an avalanche. Like, it really is, outside of all the stuff that happens after, man, it is textbook Hollywood story for you, coming almost as an underdog too, with everything how it came up.
Yeah.
I really want to dig into this. So can you kind of tell us about the days leading up to Nagano? How are you feeling? Like what's going through your mind? It must be so surreal, considering you can't even compare yourself to anybody. There's never been an Olympics for snowboarding before. You're the first of your kind.
Yeah, we were on adrenaline. The staging in Calgary, where all the athletes from all the sports were all hanging out and getting our roots gear and our new duffel bags and all the uniforms, and going through all that protocol and what situations you're supposed to wear what, and the Olympic condoms and stuff like that.
Yep.
Laughing about that. And then we all flew over there on the same airplane, and competing as an athlete, I personally never really liked competing at home as much as I liked competing away from home. It was just too much. It's already too much pressure, anyways. But then when you're at home, I always felt like there was more pressure. And so for me to have to go to Japan was perfect. I couldn't be further away to focus more on what I was wanting to do. Plus, I had been to Japan lots of times since, like, my first trip, I think, to Japan was in '89 or something like that. And so I already was comfortable being there and knew what to expect. And got there with this new gear, new old gear, but some of it was new, like the boots and the bindings, and on my older board. And I think we had 1 day or 2 days of training before the race. It might have just been 1 day. And then the opening ceremony. So it was crazy because some people, we had the training day, and I felt amazing on training day. Incredible. I never felt better. I was feeling better than ever, right? Full of confidence. And then the next day that night was the opening ceremonies, right? And that was amazing, going in to the stadium, right? And I even, like, with our handheld video cameras, or big huge video camera, I even picked my dad out in the
Cool.
stadium and zoomed in on him, and he was like waving his hand. It was quite the moment. And just amazing, like the jets flying over and the music and the big cauldron, the flame, the torches and everything. And then the next day was our race.
The next morning, first event of the Olympics. Crazy.
Of the whole entire Olympics. It was snowboard, giant slalom. And
they couldn't have given you a day to rest after the opening ceremonies. How do you come down from that?
Well, I'll tell you how is you don't go to it. And one of the guys on the team didn't go to the opening ceremonies because of that. And for me, I was like, the opening ceremonies were more important almost than anything other part. Like, that to compete, the next day. Whereas one of the other guys, I won't say who, it doesn't really matter, but they were dealing with nerves, I guess, and they didn't, want it to be interfering with their experience. So just totally different ways that athletes look at things, right? Like how to solve a problem. Like I do it one way, someone else does it a completely different way. And but I'll tell you, it was unreal, right? And so I just followed my schedule. I reverse engineered the whole wife's calling me. But I ran in the morning, went for a little jog. I don't even jog, but that was part of my routine. And But one of the things that happened was at night we were tuning. There were some secans outside the hotels, and mostly it was the professional like technicians tuning like the Austrian team's boards or whatever. But the Canadian team, we just tuned our own shit, right?
Yep.
And so I'm in there with Mark Fawcett, and he had a little equipment problem that led to his board breaking the next day in his race. And that's a whole story, holy crap story. We don't even have time to go into that. And but then the next morning, I mean, that's just things that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Athletes are in there tuning their board, tightening stuff, over tightened maybe, and then broke the seal. And but yeah, the next morning just woke up, was a nice blue sky, and banged out the first run, which didn't really, I had a couple of mistakes, and I ended up 0.4 of a second off the fastest time, which was JCJ, my teammate. And so JC won the first run, and I was 8th.
Yeah, 8. Yep.
And yeah, I was 8th, 0.4 of a second back, which is kind of a lot of time, but I wasn't outside the realm of possibility, right?
For us common folk, 0.4 of a second sounds like nothing, but
it's
like at Olympic time, that's what matters. Yeah.
In World Cup, you could have like 40 guys in there. Like the whole field could be within 0.4 of a second.
Amazing.
And but anyway, so I knew that there was an outside chance, and so basically it just threw caution to the wind, right?
Yep.
A storm rolled in also, and it got foggy and bad weather, which nobody likes that. But I was used to it being from British Columbia and riding at Whistler, and but I didn't like it either. It wasn't my favorite conditions either. And yeah, I just left it all on the hill, basically. I was already in 8th place. I had 0.4 to make up. And so I just pointed it and probably, just started off the first like 10 gates straighter than everybody coming onto the steep section. And that's when it got gnarly. I barely could get off the edge and onto the next edge at every gate for the rest of the course. Like I almost missed the second to last gate. If you check out the second to last gate, I do like a water ski. Like you can't even, I could write a book on the second to last gate. Like so much was going on there. I could see the last gate and the finish line. And I knew if I could my board was pointing completely the wrong way, basically by the time I got to the gate. And I was on a toe side turn and I had to get onto a heel side turn pointing the wrong way. And I just went for it anyways. And the board came around underneath me. I lost like 3/4 of my speed, but was able to get through the last gate and across the finish line, like, Incredible. And yeah, so I had like 7 more guys that beat me in the first run because they reversed the top 16. And so all the guys that came after me had faster first times on the first run. So it was touch and go. But yeah, when Thomas Pruger came down from Italy, he came through the finish line and none of the numbers changed except for the 100th at the end, because it was only like 200ths. And the only way I could tell that I won was because my name stayed at the top, but the numbers were so close. Like there was like 10 numbers that all matched, right? Amazing. Yeah, it was a great race, having it be so close to all the top 3 guys. Even I think Chris Kluger, the US guy, was in 4th place. Like we were all within half a second, I think, 4 guys. And so that was nice. It was a great race, a super nice course, and really suited my style. It was really steep, actually. I don't know if it came across much on camera, but it was one of the steeper courses that we ever rode on, and the fastest giant slalom I think we ever did.
Incredible, man. That's absolutely incredible. Like, thank you for sharing that. It's just hearing you talking about it has me back on the edge of my seat again, just listening to you describe it. So what an amazing time. Do you think this was like, I rewatched the run and just, it was awesome to get to relive it. Do you think that maybe the way things worked out, where you ended up in 8th after the first run, do you feel it was almost the perfect storm for you? I heard you say you wanted, you were going to have no time rather than a slow time. You were leaving everything out, carve or starve. Do you think maybe, let's just, who knows hypothetically, right? But say you were in 3rd or 4th. Do you think maybe you would have played it a little more cautious? Like, do you think everything worked out really nice the way you were 8th after the first run and just went everything at the wall on the last one?
I think, like you said, my motto was I'd rather have no time than a slow time, and I approached my first and second runs like that. I know a lot of guys would do like maybe a fast run and then have an easy second run, or maybe do an easy first run and then go for it on the second run. But I was always like 100% on both runs. Like I'm not playing games here.
Yeah, hell yeah, man! You're there to win it. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So like you were saying, because of how it worked, you had the 8th fastest time, destroyed the second time. You had to wait it out, had to sit on your hands, waiting to see how everybody else came in. I can only imagine, like, your heart's going, your stomach's sinking. When you finally pieced it together and people are coming over to you, congratulating you, what's going through your mind, man? Like, as you have become the first ever Olympic gold medalist in snowboarding.
Well, it's just like a big kind of wave of relief that the race is over, that we've been looking forward to it and dedicated our lives to it for 4 years. As first time in the sport, that was new in itself. So it was just a big weight off my shoulders that the race was over. And then obviously to have won the race was what I had trained to do, but to be Olympic champion at the time was a little bit overwhelming. The magnitude of it wasn't lost on me. I was a huge sports fan, leading up to, for my whole life. And, to represent Canada and go to the Olympics and then win a gold medal on the first day. And I was looking for like an exit too out of snowboarding, out of that level of competition, because I'd been at it hard for 10 years competing. And so I knew this was going to be one of my last races. And of course, you never know how you're going to feel after that something like that happens. So it was a balance of, a lot of people wanting, my attention and a lot of media attention, a balance between like a personal life that I already didn't really have because I was on tour for the last 10 years. And so I was kind of at home alone, really. And the only people that I was interacting with was media and people who are like fans and stuff, like supporters. And it was great, right? But I was already 10 years out of my normal life. And then my life changed again, right? Completely. So like the people that I did know, that I would see when I wasn't in Europe competing, so everything changed for them too, right? And so I had to kind of not reinvent who I was, but just kind of double down on who I was and who I thought I was, and just kind of allow for the change to happen, like people recognizing me just walking down the street, like I'm not at a snowboard contest.
Yeah. Well, it went from like, this is the first ever time it's in the Olympics. It went from snowboarding fans seeing you to the world.
And also the whole weed thing brought so much attention to me.
Well, yeah.
If it hadn't have been for that, I wouldn't have gotten people wouldn't have been able to, like, I flew from Tokyo to Los Angeles to do the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. That wouldn't have happened.
No, yep. Yeah.
Right? That I wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for the whole weed and that whole controversy. And I got in, and the border guys were like, "Oh, well, we don't know if we can let you in or not."
Oh,
Right? So right away, I'm getting pushback. They end up letting me in because I'm going to, do the Tonight Show. And I get to the Beverly Hilton where I'm staying, and like people standing around the outside of the hotel recognizing me, like just random people in Los Angeles. And yeah, so it was a big sort of re and rebirth of of myself, and
Mhm.
like me getting used to like that sort of attention. And then, it was just a whirlwind after that for years and years. I did compete the next season, won the first race, and then got disqualified because I might have jumped over a gate or something. And but then the media attention at the race
Mhm.
was unprecedented. Like there was never that much media at a snowboard race
Yeah.
before. And they're all there to just talk to me and about if I think I should be a role model or not. And it was already tough as an athlete to go through the motions and get yourself to Europe
Of
and
course.
compete
Mhm.
without having like all this other stuff going on.
Yeah,
And we can get into it,
I would
whatever,
love to. Yeah,
if you want. I
yeah,
don't know if
yeah.
you have
Please,
about
man.
it, but
I do have some questions, but like I would love to talk about it. I think people from younger people now would be shocked to realize what happened to you with how everything is like there's no prohibition, everything's legalized in Canada now. I do have one quick question I want to jump on right before we get into all the weed stuff that happened. And so you've won the gold medal. I know there was a lot. You were the first day. There's a lot of events to go. What was that before everything kind of turned? What was that first night in the Olympic Village? It must have been pretty fun time for you. You must have been just the man back there.
with the medal, yeah, we partied good that
That's
night
awesome.
at the hotel, and we were up at the ski resort, so we weren't down in Olympic Village in Nagano. We were up at the ski resort partying, and yeah, we had a great night. Finally, the race was over, and at least our race was over.
Yeah.
Other athletes like the half pipe guys and the women racers and so forth, they still had their event. But um yeah, and the next morning people were in my room checking out my medal, and the coaches came in and told me to to get out and for me to sit down. And then that's when
It's
they
everything.
told
Yeah.
me I tested positive for something, and that's when it all started.
So I just want to set the stage for everybody. Like I'm sure anybody who's listened this far has been checked out this interview probably has an idea of what happened. But we've covered up everything that happened, all your obstacles you had to overcome. Like you won an Olympic gold medal. There's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of people who can say that to begin with. And then I don't think anybody else in the world has ever had an experience like you've had after. What they called a passive amount of marijuana was found in your system. And this is what you were saying. You found out the day after getting to celebrate a little bit. Your coaches came, told you about that, and dude, you had to get interrogated inside of a Japanese jail because of like a millionth of a nanogram or something.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane. Can you break down what happened after? Because I've got to hear it firsthand from you because it's just one of the, like I was saying, nobody else in the world has this story.
Yeah, it was wild. So I did 2 appeals to the IOC board, 30 members, saying how I tested positive, secondhand smoke, and in Whistler and wherever else I was, people were smoking weed and I wasn't. And that I smoked weed like, before, but then I stopped to meet Olympic criteria. And this was like really into prohibition era.
Mm-hmm.
So it was almost a lot just to say that. But I wanted to be honest with them about it, and that I did stop, and so I lost that appeal, and I had a second appeal which I basically said the same thing, which I lost that as well. And it was a split decision too. And so part of the story is how Dick Pound didn't vote for me and didn't break the tie. And usually they give it to the athlete whenever there's a tie or a split decision like this. And unprecedentedly, they didn't this time. And so the third chance that I had to, fight for the medal was to go to court, the court of arbitration. And so they appointed me the 3 lawyers that were there from the IOC to, intervene in any kind of a situation like this. And as it turned out, and this was like over the course of 2 days, I guess, after my race. And so, of course, I can't sleep at all. So I'm like 3 days into not sleeping, plus didn't really, I'm 19 hours into jet lag. I've only been into Japan for like 4 days or something, 5 days. And not eating, like my mental health, not good.
No.
Also not baked, which was, like I was really fish out of water at this point in time. Like okay. And yeah, it was just, a rigmarole. And so the coaches sent me off down to Nagano in a shuttle van. I had a 2-hour ride by myself with an athlete who was also going to Athletes Village. And he's like, "Hey man, how's it going?" Like he didn't even know what was going on. And I'm like, "Bro, I can't talk right now, man." And it was quite the ride down to Nagano. And but yeah, so the court of arbitration, the 3 lawyers are like, "Hey, here's the list of banned substances and cannabis and weed, and it's not on it. Like, you didn't break any rules, actually, and you're going to get your medal back." But in the meantime, somehow the 3 drug tests that I did in Canada were made public for some reason, and that I did test positive for weed in all of those drug tests before I went to Nagano. And so this is swirling around in the media, right? And I'm just going like, well, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. Like, how did that happen? And no one even told me, right? And then, of course, now in retrospect, you can see that the reason why I was testing positive for weed and no one told me is because weed wasn't on the list, and there was no reason to tell me, right? But for whatever reason, and the IOC knows what their list is. Mm-hmm. Like they thrive on that list, right? That's their thing.
It's their job. Yeah, of course.
The whole Olympics is the list of banned substances, right? Like Shikari this summer, right? Like they didn't miss it.
Yeah.
So how is it that they're trying to bust me for it? It was unbelievable what went down. Like
it is. It's
like, oh, sorry, we're trying to. I don't know what they were doing.
Well, they dragged your name through the mud, did all this.
You can draw your own conclusions, but I was feeling a little bit ripped off at the time, thinking like, well, this has ruined my experience, and also like we're 20 years away from the end of Prohibition, which we didn't know then either, right? And so right away, like, okay, yeah, and then you're right. So they say I'm going to be okay, but they haven't made the announcement yet. So I leave the wine and cheese party where like the Prince of Monaco, Prince Albert was there, and I'm like talking with all these people, and the cops just want you to go up to the police station because they opened a file on you, and it's just a routine thing. And the next thing you know, I'm separated from the RCMP guy, and the other Canadian Olympic Association representatives that were supposed to not be separated from me. And I'm back in the back of the jail, getting interrogated for hours and hours like that for the rest of the day after I'm already like exhausted, right?
Jesus, yeah.
And finally, after so many hours of talking about weed and whatever dumb questions they were asking me, because they literally don't know anything about it. They think it's heroin, right? At this point. And they can't figure it out. And the translator doesn't speak English. And I said, I'm not talking anymore. And they left. And I don't know how long they left me there for, but then they came back and got me and said that they can't keep an Olympic gold medalist in jail. It's too controversial. And so they kind of hinted. And then when I was getting closer to the front of the police station, I could see Carol Ann Letheren and the other COA representatives, like with their arms in the air or whatever, cheering. Because they had gone through this whole thing with me too, right?
Of course.
And supported me and believed my story, which strangely enough, not a lot of people believed it. Which I was astonished. Like, how am I going to make up a fucking thing like that at a moment like this? It's not happening. And I was surprised that people weren't believing it. And then we finally get out of the police station, and I held up my medal and did some interviews on the steps of the police station, which it didn't say that was the police station. Hey, on the interview, there's a media of me saying that, but it didn't say that. But then the cops still went up to the hotel with dogs and everything and me to search my room and the hotel and stuff. So we paraded through the hotel, and all the snowboarders were like throwing garbage at the cops, and like there was like literally hundreds of people like in the lobby, like following my story. Like all my friends that I had been living, like literally this was my family, right? The World Cup tour, right? All the half pipers, men and women, all the the coaches, like it was crazy. So anyway, obviously they leave empty-handed, and I'm free to go. And then I end up in my room after like 3 days. Like the last thing I remember was the room before I went to, do my race. Like that, I can't remember anything that just happened. And the phone's ringing, which I find to be odd. I was like, what if I had picked it up and it was like some amazing thing, and I just happened to be here after 4 days of not being here? So I pick it up, and it's my buddy. He's like, oh, you have to go to Jay Leno, and you have to jump on an airplane tomorrow. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is going down. Dude. And it was wild.
What insane just highs, lows from going to Nagano, winning a gold medal, being told you tested positive, being told you're going to get it back, going to jail, and then going to the Jay Leno show. Like what is the span? Like this is like 8 days. Like what a whirlwind for you, dude.
Yeah, and it didn't stop there, because the next thing you know, I was in Toronto doing stuff for Roots and packed I go from Jay Leno to Whistler and flying into Vancouver and the huge. Then I'm in Toronto, just on this big, huge media tour. I mean, the whole entire, like I never really recuperated until the summertime, probably. I didn't race anymore that year. And I was pretty much like in a state of PTSD. Like,
of course,
I didn't want to, I'd be back in Whistler and people recognizing me, like in such a small community, like tourists recognizing me and other people. And like the pizza guy can't believe he's delivering me a pizza, just a lot of like changes like that were, on the one hand, I was like cool, and there was a lot of support, for me, and people just, thought it was all like cool and stuff. And then on the other hand, it's like, fuck man, I don't have any money. I can't pay my bills, and I have to be nice right now. And it was just so tricky,
Yeah. Geez, what a tightrope to walk. It is. It's just crazy, all the stuff that's happened. As this happens, and you're dealing with all the controversies, everything's just a whirlwind right now. The one thing like I noticed, and I really wanted to almost even just compliment you on, is you came off as just a fiercely loyal guy. I remember they asked you questions about like, are you going to stop hanging out with your friends?
I'm not going to change my friends for you. I don't know. I don't care what you think about that. I think my friends are real. and I'm going to stand behind them. I support them. I'll never deviate from that. I might have to wear a gas mask from now on, but whatever.
And just stuff like that, man. And you said it must have been hard as a young man, and people really don't understand the stigma and that was around weed. Like it was like Ronald Reagan said, it's the worst. It's the worse than heroin, like stuff like that. Like we're closer to the war on drugs now in '98 than we are to prohibition. Like it's insane to think about. Did you ever get bitter when people would say like, oh, this guy is a pothead, he's whatever, when you abstained, became an Olympic gold medalist, and people are saying kind of like, how do you not just say, screw all you guys, I did this, whatever, I don't need your approval? You handled it very coolly. You're very loyal to your friends. I think maybe something that gets kind of missing this is I think you couldn't have done a better job representing Canada, and you're an Olympic hero, man. Like could tell, I know that was a lot to unload on you there, but what's all that? Like, what's that? You're the only person I'll ever talk to that's been through these experiences. So it's cool to pick your brain.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, it was, unprecedented for me to have to even say stuff like that. Like, I don't want to say shit about my friends. Like, why are my friends involved all of a sudden? Like what, they didn't do anything. Like, to me, it was all just crazy because I was living in a cannabis culture where we knew that the outside world was different, right? But living in Whistler and the whole 9 yards, like there wasn't like I never questioned like my own personal lifestyle or who I hung out with. Like that was not in question at any point in time. I never considered not smoking weed for 1 second ever. I decided not to, I decided to pass test criteria to go to the Olympics, and weed is actually such a great substance that it's no problem to go on and off of it. It's more like video games or TV as far as being addicted than it is physically addictive. And it's more annoying to, of an annoyance, but it wasn't a problem. And yeah, just going through all the ups and downs and, just realizing who you are as a person, what really was my best defense, is kind of, okay, like, I am getting behind cannabis, and I am going to use this platform that I have now to promote cannabis and why it shouldn't be illegal and why it shouldn't be on the list of banned substances and why athletes use cannabis. And, when Michael Phelps had his famous bong hit, I was the guy that went on NBC to talk about why athletes would use cannabis. And where nobody else would, right? All the other athletes might have thought they had something to lose by talking about cannabis, where I was on the no-fly list already after 9/11. I was already not allowed in the States. Everybody already knew I smoked weed. I already don't have the corporate opportunities as an Olympic gold medalist, that I was getting before the internet. And oddly enough, the internet kind of helped me and hurt me at the same time. When they turned on the internet, all of a sudden I wasn't getting the gigs anymore because they can do the click and then like, oh, weed, oh, we don't want that guy anymore. So there was a lot of opportunities that came from me being behind cannabis. Also, as far as the ups and downs, there was a lot of missed opportunities, of course, but there was a lot of new opportunities. But we didn't know what the time frame was, but I did know from my own experience that weed was healthy for me, and that I thought it would be something that would catch on and hopefully become legalized over time. And even the most like entrenched weed activists never thought in our lifetime we would see legal recreational cannabis. And I also went through an era where no one ever thought snowboarding would be allowed on the mountain. So like, don't tell me, so I've gone through snowboard prohibition already, right? I know about prohibition. So now we're going to take on weed prohibition. And I literally, spent the last 20 years as a weed activist. I had my own dispensary. I'm currently working for the Green Mountain Health Alliance greenhouse. If you go into my Instagram, Ross Rebagliati 98, you can see the greenhouse that we're building right now. And we've gone right through legalization and right out the other end.
Yeah. Well,
after 24 years now.
Hell yeah, man. I do think I think maybe this is another thing that's understated with you is I think you really you're almost a pioneer for legalization and stuff. You really put it in the face of the mainstream establishment. An Olympic gold medalist, a real athlete winning at the highest levels of competition smokes weed. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It kind of like I remember I was in public school. I remember when they wheeled us the classic seatbelt VCR TV. They wheeled it in, and we were watching the Olympics. And like I remember seeing that, watching the whole thing unfold, and like I was pretty young, not quite understanding, but knowing that like something was happening and people were talking about stuff. And you're a pioneer for that too, man. And like you said, prohibition for snowboarding, prohibition for marijuana. You've really been at the forefront for it all.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, and two great things like snowboarding is so great, and so is weed.
Hell yeah.
Too, for so many different reasons, and I've used cannabis over the years for so many different things, for injuries, for mental wellness, to unwind at the end of the year or end of the day. I've actually stopped drinking like 4 years ago or something like that completely. I just use weed now for, my end of the day and first thing in the morning, like pretty much like, for me, it's like a regular kind of like coffee, I guess you could say. And I've got my tolerance to the point where I don't get baked when I smoke a joint, right? Unless I'm with somebody I don't know, which is not often these days. We're not out and about doing trade shows and stuff like we used to be. But we will be back on the scene as soon as things straighten out here with being able to have trade shows and things. So, but for now, like, I'm just happy to be, I'm working with this guy, Jeff Thorne, like I said, at the Green Mountain Health Alliance. It's like a dream job, man. We're growing in a greenhouse. We have light depth, the best genetics, sun grown. We have, the best LED lights also. The opportunity to work in a facility like this, if you're a guy like me, it's basically like going heli skiing, and on the weekends I coach the Apex Snowboard Club.
Awesome.
at Apex Mountain. So I've got the kids, I got the family. I'm working 5 days a week. I coach 1 day a week on the mountain. The kids are up on both days. I ride with the kids and ski with the kids on Sundays. And yeah, man, it's full on.
That's awesome to hear, man. It is really cool to hear all these awesome things happen for you. Like I think I mentioned it right before we even came on here, but you were honestly like one of my first heroes. I remember watching in public school when you won that gold medal. It's been so cool to get to chop it up with you, man. Pick your brain. I'd like to do just, if you got, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're a busy guy. I'd like to just one fun question, one more serious one with you if you got a minute.
Sure.
Just to kind of wrap everything up here. What would you give as advice maybe for a young athlete, as somebody who's been through everything? You've been under the worst kind of media pressures. What even maybe not even an athlete. What's just advice you can give to people out there who are struggling, need to overcome? Any words of wisdom?
Never give up, and be prepared to basically, like, I mean, winning is a losing game. Okay, you're gonna lose a lot. There's gonna be lots of ups and downs, but you got to lose to win, right? And I think if you can wrap your head around that, and if you really want to do it, I think that's the key thing. You have to really want to do it. Even when you're winning, you want to quit. Imagine when you're the guy that's the top 10 guy that can never make the podium. I know guys like that never made the podium in 10 years. And it's hard when you're winning. When you're the best, it's hard. So that's what I would wrap your head around.
Awesome, man. That's awesome, because really you are a one of a kind person who's had experiences in athletics and life that I don't think anybody can really relate. Like, not people can relate to, but nobody's experienced personally. And it's really cool just getting to chop it up and pick your brain for stuff like that. I got one more before I send you on your way here.
Yeah.
I see you've got the grill. I've seen in a few interviews you've got the OVO sweaters. Are you a big Drake fan? Big hip hop influence?
Oh yeah, I love Drake. I'm a big, huge hip hop guy for sure. You know, the 80s and 90s for me were like gangbusters. You know, Beastie Boys, right in there.
Yeah.
When Snoop Dogg launched, and it was all like Warren G and you know, even before that, like with Two Live Crew and stuff. But now it's just everything's. I'm a big reggae fan, and I'm right into like Frank Zappa also. Like I've got a pretty wide range of music that I need to have and that I love. You know, I've done work with OVO. I did a big photo shoot. This is actually my clothing line, OVO, my own shit from OVO that I did last year with them. It sold out in 2 days.
That's awesome.
And so yeah, I'm super pumped to be representing the OVO, and I got the owl. But yeah, you know, weed's bringing people together now, and now that it's legal and there's like business, you know, I don't know Drake, but one day we're gonna cross paths.
I believe it. Hell yeah, man. I'd absolutely. That's a collab I see happening for sure.
Yeah, I would love to do something. I'd love to do anything, but you know, I'm just proud that he's Canadian. I'm proud I'm Canadian, and I'm proud that we're all here and that we're all Canadians and that we're in Canada. And yeah, it's just a crazy fucking time to be Canadian.
Well, dude, this has been incredible. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to chop it up on the show here. I have a ton of respect for you, for any athlete who is an Olympian, of course, and then everything that you handled, the way you handled it, man, the way you stayed loyal to your friends. I think you come off as a stand-up dude, and I wish you nothing but the success going on, man. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join the show today.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Hell yeah. This has been episode 25 of the Gabbin with Gavin podcast. We're going to throw up all of Ross's info. Go follow, go check out everything. Go check out Ross Gold, and hell yeah. We're in 1990 Studios. Thank you to our sponsor, Town Brewery. Thanks for checking out the show, everyone.
Peace.